Chapter 1. The Quantum Web, a form of the internet where quantum computing allowed for a massive increase in speed. Sure, one can always do what the internet has always done in olden days, like load up articles to read, buy cheap crap, or watch porn on the screen. Due to the transfer of speed alongside modern computational paradigms centered around quantum computing, this internet could do so much more. The 2030s gave us the AR revolution, where the environment, regardless of where you actually were, could be altered from your point of view. The computational power allowed for not just what you saw or heard to be simulated, but also what you smelt or felt when touching surfaces. A meal made of polymers could easily look and taste like steak, chicken, or even caramel and peanut chocolate ice cream, so long as you were fine with cutting ice cream with a knife and eating it with a fork. The technology doesn't actually change the composition of the protein polymers, just how it's perceived. With the AR evolution came the evolution of VR technology. Entire worlds are simulated for people to walk in. Entire scenarios are crafted to literally place someone in the shoes of another. Combined with the evolution of AR, it allowed for anyone to literally be a badass, fighting dragons with a sword. No, you didn't press a button to swing the sword like in olden days. You think you are holding a sword, and you somehow have the strength to swing it. With VR, you plug in, and you are that person, the avatar as it's called, with whatever abilities the creators of that VR environment deemed necessary. Yes, there have been avant-garde creators who programmed avatars to be physically disabled as part of the profound experience. Of course, it's completely unreal. Eating food in VR will not feel your real body. Virtual augmented realities, commonly called VARs, create what most recognize as the quantum web. Such can simulate other people, translating their avatar information as objects you can interact with. Yes, you can shake their hand, give high fives, hug and cuddle them, and even have sex with them. One of the first uses of this technology, of course. This world Iris lived in, breathed, ate, and slept in. Iris, in all fairness, wasn't that poorly off. Her morning started with her phone alarm wailing at 7:45 a.m. It wailed for some time as she debated whether she should even bother waking up. It wasn't like the physical world had anything to offer her after all. But if she still wanted her readily available access to the quantum web, she needed to wake up and get dressed. So she sat up in the bed, ending the alarm ping in her mind. For a brief moment, she saw the room for what it was, a cheap plastic bed frame with a thin mattress covered in white sheets and blankets, with a simple wardrobe made of particle board. The moment passed. The VAR in her apartment activated upon detecting that Iris woke up. From out of a mahogany wardrobe trimmed in rose gold, she pulled out the matted blouses and black, thin fabric pants that made up business casual. It's ridiculous that Megacorps insists I should be in the office at all. She thought as she ate cinnamon raisin oatmeal that she knew in the back of her mind was actually a white substance known as protein polymer. With the quantum web and its speed fast enough to simulate every minute detail about reality, coupled with virtual private networks that allowed the segregation of this space, why even have offices? The only reason why anyone would want to be in the office was if the R-Bell connection failed. What does an in-person meeting offer that an AR call can't? As it was hump day, she needed to be in the office, so out the door she walked from her single-bedroom apartment into the elevators. 5 floors down, and she was in a small room lined with mailboxes that led to the outside. She walked through the smog-infested streets of Toronto, tripping over homeless people covered in blankets on top of subway grates along the way. She could play a game where she tried to guess which ones were drunk, or high on opium, or just that broken without a lord. Instead, she put an AR overlay on blaring music and dressed obstacles, drowning out the grimy dirt of the cleanest city in the advanced world. At the subway station, she filed in to be pushed into the next available car. Being in such close proximity to others almost made her gag. Their sweat stank of smoke, fumes from perfume and cologne, piss and shit. She almost jumped at the sound of someone coughing and sneezing, even if they did so in their hand or elbow. God, how can people stand themselves in meat space? She commonly thought. Never mind fucking. She cursed the sight of the Twin Towers, as she always did, a waste of space developed on behalf of some bank 20 years ago. Construction started on it before the pandemic, And when it came to the first world's attention that many white-collar jobs could be done remotely, they pushed to fill office space, favoring obsolete forms of business in tent cities, to say, affordable housing, condos even. Into the space and up the elevator, smushed by the heat and sweat of gross penguin-suited humans. She tried to figure out which ones were augmented and which ones were still all natural. The tech had evolved to the point where it wasn't easy to tell. Still, she got to her office floor. From the elevator shutters, she only saw gray cubicled walls outlining a labyrinth all the way to sheets of transparent glass overlooking the streets of Toronto. Fluorescent tubes made her squint her eyes as she strolled along a floor of cheap hardwood, all to navigate the mass before her to her workstation, where she logged in and locked her possessions into the provided drawer next to her black mesh office chair. Once in, she locked her machine and walked through more maze to the center of her section of the cubicle farm for the daily stand-up. The stand-up was a reminder from a time where workers were always in the office, and this touch-based meeting, too short to justify a meeting room, was held within the center of the farm. Now you only had to stand up when forced into a physical office. Remote, these meetings took place via AR meeting. Gavin, one of the senior engineers, stood in front of a whiteboard with a green marker in hand. Dressed in a red plaid dress shirt and khaki pants, he was a classic middle-aged white man with brown eyes and graying brown hair. As part of this ritual, he asked, "How's everyone?" Not a person would claim anything other than all right. He carried on. "Okay, Richard, how's the cloud incident coming?" "Just talking to developers to get the hotfix deployed." A younger white man in a blue plaid dress shirt and denim jeans calmly replied. "Super," Gavin nodded. "And Gaurav, figured out the login incident last night." A darker-colored man in a white shirt and black pants looked towards Gavin with dark eyes. "Still working on it," he spoke with a South Asian accent. "We think it's related to our Whipple. Keep us posted." Cindy, a woman with skin the color of off cream, held her hand up and said, "The automation script to get the incident counts has been launched. Still monitoring." Something about the excitement in the hooded eyes of this woman looked too added in. "Great," Gavin then looked to the team and said, "Any roadblocks?" Unless some bureaucrat was being pedantic, there usually wasn't. As with anywhere, a second person had to sign off on something you did just to make sure this corruption thing that totally wasn't happening didn't happen. Given horror stories from InfoSec, like the broker who could approve their own loan requests, this permission system was just to shut up journals and governments. There weren't any roadblocks. "Alright, everyone, get to it." She walked back to her workstation and took a look at her inboxes, starting with the work email system. Old, but effective. Like anything that calls itself the mail, mostly junk. Chatter between development teams and bugs that did not concern her, work clubs with activities she could care less about, and seriously, who wants to hang out with their co-workers outside of office hours? She couldn't be the only person that hated them. Items concerning things like Alice and analytics, wanting to know when that script in Python would be ready, and a policy update worth reading waited for her. Next, she accessed several dashboards, one following the series of tech tickets. She looked at the one assigned to her as an escalation from a frontline TSR that ruled out a system issue. A program that printed stock reports kept stalling. They needed a bash script to be written to replicate between systems, and Alice still needed that Python script. Other tickets, like one about the cloud and one concerning incidents and problems, sat without anything of note. With the stock report program checked out in the version management system, she got to work, prepping yet another change list as she then reran the program, looking for which line was breaking. She did her best to ignore the office gossip from people she did not care about or even like on any level. Of course, it wasn't hard to overhear conversations. "Vandy's on a verbal. Something about being late too many times. He needs to get his act together, he's going to get fired." "Fired? Nah. He'll be sent back to India where he could burn in the hot sun." "Janice from accounting may have eyes for Rick." "No. Heard they got caught in the broom closet last week." "Oh, they couldn't wait till office hours at least?" "More restraint than the CIO, at least." Can someone explain why some yahoo in the cast wants nothing to do with the USA over freedom, then want to live in a theocracy stricter than Beijing? Still want to know how long California and Washington hold out before either America swallows them. You think Arizona's going to take out California? Texas might. You need a map? Texas doesn't border California. Isn't Arizona part of the cast? Texas can march people through. We'll miss the free lands of Western America. Heard Washington wants to join Confederation? Would be hard for Texas to help them. They mean Canadian Confederation, not Confederate American States. And so on. The clock struck 13th hour, or 1 p.m., depending on who you ask. Iris locked the workstation and walked down to the meeting room for the mandatory in-person meeting meant to justify forcing her out of bed to come to this place. The manager, Lucy her name was, sat at the head of a rectangular table in a room walled in glass, not to look pretty, but so a passerby could tell no one was being raped in there. Alright, so here we are in the development roadmap, she started, saying, with the optimization of the report deliveries, more and more of it will be scripts and not manual work, reducing human error. And humans. Iris couldn't help but think. The Sea Lords cared more about reducing human labor than if said labor was any good. She put up on a projector screen a slide showing a colorful Gantt chart with boxes of numbers. By the end of the month, we should be getting the code for the combined dashboards and testing and ensure accuracy of the data. Iris zoned out, having heard some of this before, and really didn't care what the middle managing lice thought her work should be at. Perhaps that's why the weekly in-office shifts were a thing? So those Sea Lord wannabe parasites still had a reason to exist? She mentally woke up to hear Lucy continue in her drone. So, as a heads up, there is worry at the upper level about the economic downturn happening lately. There has been a drop in sales numbers for several months now, so there will be some restructuring to reflect that. Drop in sales numbers, economic downturn, downsizing, restructuring, call it whatever you like. Iris heard these threats so often she became numb to them. They lay her off? Well, at least it's in her employment record as termination without cause, so she could go find some other feudal lord to eat the table scraps of. Gavin asked in this meeting, "You think we could be laid off?" Lucy's gave a blunt response. "We're in back-end, not critical, and a cost of resources, so..." Don't the Sea Lords know how important what we do is? We aren't a cost of resources. Or is there no value in things not breaking? I agree, but all they see is the bottom line, and they aren't going to remove the sales force that makes them money. They're removing the support department that loses them money. Iris chipped in her 2 cads. Business 101. All occupations can be categorized as one of 2 things, sales and sales support. Sales is what gets consumers to buy your product or service, while sales support maintains pipelines and infrastructure, so to make it easier for the sales jobs to sell. I can't be the only person disturbed by how few supposed business experts understand this. I know, Iris. I know, Lucy nodded, her face pursed in defeat. Richard added, Kinda hard to sell the web if it's not working, right? Even though Rogers Bell routinely lays off technicians, only to hire them back after a massive multi-day outage, surely they think they can sell the web without it working, said Cindy. Gotta feel bad for Lucy, Iris thought. Sure, she's a manager and a bitch, but she only has so much power. The meeting ended, and Iris returned to her desk to respond to an email from Alice about how the output of her script should look. At last, the day ended, and she could leave. Along Front Street, she approached a vendor inside a sheet of plastic. He sat next to an automated flipper sat with a slight line of rust attached to a propane grill. The human operator, a tan-skinned gentleman, overdressed due to being more accustomed to warmer places, gave Iris a nod as she held out her phone and only said, "A hot dog, please." The operator punched a button in, and Iris held her phone to a white block just outside the plastic until it beeped, spending 15 CAD. The operator took out a foot-long pre-cooked sausage with the case removed, threaded a metal thermometer on the one end, and placed it on the grill. As she waited, 2 more people approached and ordered Italian sausage, going for 25 CAD each, and a can of pop, another 5 CAD. Ritzy. She thought his uncooked meat and intestine also had thermometers inserted and placed next to her hot dog on the grill. The automated flipper gripped each with tongs and turned them, basing when to turn on information relayed to it from thermometers and which kind of meat was placed on the grill. A few minutes passed before they placed her hot dog on a bun, moved the thermometer, and handed it to her. "Thank you," she said as she squirted a bit of ketchup on it and started walking for the subway. A smile came over her face at the feel of the animal fat dripping down her face, and the taste of generic meat filled her mouth. Not much, but each week it would be her only real meal, food undisguised by an AR routine. She tapped her phone to use her transit pass, allowing the plastic doors to open and allow her in, trained to only open on a tap to keep the homeless out. Once crammed inside, she turned an AR overlay on to distract from the massive humanity pressing into her. Once her stop arrived, she battled her way out of the train car while giving a nod to people who stepped out, not because it was their stop, but to give room for people to maneuver out of the tumor of humanity. She walked from the dirt concrete station to the street. There, in the navy darkness, she walked a cityscape with buildings under construction and robots scuttling along, their insect-like limbs scaling scaffolding, carrying materials and tools. Well-dressed people lined up at a terminal, each pressing buttons and tapping phones for a real-world experience. Overhead, drones carried boxes and vehicles without people passing by. She knew that DevOps could not be replaced by AI, no matter how good at programming the damn things got. However, once robots with functional AI came around, a lot of jobs were lost. Anything that required a combination of heavy lifting and menial thought got outsourced to machines.